What's good, everybody? Today I'm just going to do a little video, 5 things I hate about my MK8 Golf R. Before the video starts, just make sure to like, subscribe, comment. Also, if you guys want any type of car parts, check out my website, westcoastheroes.com. Trying to expand into the Mark 8s and Mark 7s and other Volkswagens and other German cars, but mostly we offer parts for like BMWs and all that. So if you have a BMW, just check it out. Yeah, let's get straight into it. The first thing I hate about my Mark 8 Golf R is the hill assist. If you don't know what hill assist is, basically it's supposed to help you get the car moving without rolling back when you're on a hill. So what it does is it holds the brakes when you're on a hill, and once it feels any sort of like gas input or movement forward, it lets go and lets you basically move. It just doesn't work very well. So since this car is a manual, you know, usually a hill assist would be more useful, but in all honesty, I tend to call this stall assist. I find myself actually just letting go of the brake and letting the car roll back first and then going into first gear, because if I try to initiate first gear without or with the hill assist rather, it either holds the brakes way too long on like a super small slope, or I'm on a steep hill and it just releases the brakes right away and there's no warning or anything like that. So it's kind of confusing the way it works. I guess I've gotten used to it now, but like I said, I tend to just let the hill assist release itself and then I get rolling. That's always kind of annoyed me with this car, and it really does piss me off, I can't even lie. And seemingly a lot of DSG owners experience the same thing. Like they'd be on a hill and they'd be pressing the gas and the car just holds the brakes and it just doesn't move, and then eventually it releases, obviously, but after a way elongated period of time. And the reason it really does annoy me is because I cannot turn this off. If I could turn it off, I would, because it does not help me out in any way, and it actually makes my life harder driving this car. So the next thing I don't like about this car is the infotainment system. So obviously this may not seem as a surprise to most people. At first, like all this haptic touch button stuff is a little bit weird, and I can't lie, it was kind of a learning curve, but now that I've lived with the car for some time, I'm pretty much used to all that. But what really annoys me about this whole infotainment system is just how laggy it is. So this is a 2023, and most of the 2023s were supposed to have these issues solved, but this car still has a lot of those issues. I'll throw up some clips of what it was doing the other day. Basically, it was like spamming the screen like for roadside assist. I didn't even touch anything.
Nick, you gotta study this.
Bro. Bro, what is going on? In Volkswagen. And randomly, like the digital gauge cluster, like some of the displays just go black, or the screen just goes black randomly and turns off. What really annoys me is, as you can see, there's these controls right here. So that's for your temperature controls, that's the volume slider, and then that's the other side's temperature controls. These do not light up at night. So when you're first like having this car, you're like, what am I clicking? So you're kind of just reaching into a dark space because it's not lit up. The system actually is pretty intuitive and it's not all too bad. And you do have your shortcut menus here, so you can put your most used buttons there. You could change all those out. But like I said, it's just incredibly laggy from my experience, especially now that it's gone a little cooler out. This thing just kind of does not want to work properly sometimes. And all the buttons on the steering wheel aren't too bad, but it still doesn't feel great pressing on basically nothing. And you do get some feedback. You kind of don't tend to notice pressing some stuff, particularly when you're driving hard. Let's say you have both your hands at 9 and 3, or 3 and 9, sorry. And I tend to hit this huge steering wheel button sometimes. So I'd be just driving, I'm like, why is the steering wheel getting hot? So yeah, especially on the colder mornings and just on cold start in general, the infotainment system just takes a minute to start up. All these icons here, you can see them like kind of loading in as you're turning on the car, or in the seconds following that, and it's just kind of funny to see this thing glitch out. I really hope they fix a lot of that stuff in the next generation, and no volume knob does annoy me, I can't lie. So the third thing I hate about this car are just the assist systems in general, and just all the safety nannies it has. So as you can see, I have my assist menu pulled up here. This car does have front assist, so that's the emergency braking, and I've noticed this just kind of freaks out. And let's say there's a car in front of me, I'm kind of nearby, but like obviously I get out of the way, but this system just trips out, and it's happened before where I'm just kind of driving and it just brakes really hard. Or I had another instance where I was just driving, I wasn't even speeding, and I was just driving straight, and there was someone pulling out of a driveway or like a plaza, and they had their nose out, but they didn't pull out. And the car also, same thing, just slammed on the brakes, and it kind of just trips me out. Thankfully, I can turn that off, so if I know I'm going on a spirited drive with like a bunch of different cars, I just tend to turn that off so it doesn't bother me. Another thing being is that even though it says you can turn off traction control all the way, you really can't, because to a certain extent, this car still has like ABS traction control enabled. So if you're doing something really kind of crazy, and these cars can handle like really spirited driving for sure, I've experienced it. It kicks in that ABS traction control, just like the Mark 7s had the same issue, and it just cuts all the power, and it's super annoying. So I would say, in general, this car is pretty unbearable to drive aggressively with traction control on, because it just cuts power so often. So you have to drive in at least ESC Sport. That's what I usually do. Or if you're really trying to go after it, maybe turn it off all the way. Kind of just the gripe that most people experience with all newer cars. They have all these safety systems, all these assist nannies, that a lot of us car enthusiasts and drivers don't enjoy. And this is pretty apparent in all of Volkswagen's lineup, is the obvious cost cutting. So if we go to pop the hood here, I just did a double, I'm used to BMWs. You really see this right away with the lack of a hood strut. Now, in my opinion, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, for a car of this price, I think absolutely should be a hood strut. And where's the engine cover? So I know there were reports of these catching on fire, and I think they were all recalled, but this car's a 2023. I thought they'd already have that figured out. So obviously those two things, which you could really see the cost cutting coming into play. And one thing also I noticed is the car seems to have a lot of drivetrain slop. So from what I understand, I think they reused all the same engine and transmission mounts from the Mark 7, and obviously these have a higher output of torque from the factory, and you really feel kind of the drivetrain slop when you're kind of letting off the gas. It kind of shakes a little more than you'd expect. Doesn't feel as solid as you'd want, and you know, that's another cost cutting thing there. Another telltale sign of the cost cutting is the fact that all the manual cars, the Golf Rs, right, have 15 less torque, because the clutches, or the stock clutch rather, cannot handle that increased torque output. You know, Volkswagen obviously has the funds to source a clutch that can handle a little bit more torque. These cars are not like that torquey. I mean, obviously I think they have about, this one has 280 and the autos have 295, but that's not like an insane amount where they can't find a clutch that can handle 15 more torque. So the last thing I'd say I hate about this car, so that's the fifth reason, is the sound system is a little bit underwhelming. This car has a Harman Kardon sound system, and usually Harman Kardon is known to be a great sound system in a car, but in this car I find it to be a little underwhelming. Like, when I was going to purchase this car, I was super excited to see that Harman Kardon sound system, because, you know, a lot of my friends and my family and people I know have BMWs, and the Harman Kardon sound systems are usually great. And I was like, wow. And I was kind of disappointed, to be honest, especially by the subwoofer. I apologize for the messy trunk. You see the subwoofer here, and this is the Harman Kardon specific subwoofer, and it kind of sucks. So what I've seen a lot of people doing is swapping in the Fender subwoofer from the previous generation, like the Mark 7. And I remember the Fender subwoofer being really quite good, so I think that's a pretty good retro mod. So yeah, overall, like I said, the door speakers are pretty good, but the subwoofer is underwhelming, and to a certain extent, the door speakers are also a little underwhelming, comparing it to the rest of the Harman Kardon sound systems I've heard throughout my life. Also, the whole thing with the Harman Kardon sound system, it has some software kinks, just like the infotainment does. So randomly, you'd hear the audio travel from basically being centered in the middle, and then it would just go to like one side of the car and then the next. Sometimes the audio just cuts out, and it's just kind of glitchy and weird. So obviously that's an annoyance. So that was 5 things I hate about my Mark 8 Golf R. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know maybe a few of the reasons you may think are kind of nitpicky and all that, but that's just kind of what I think. And some of them are really annoying, and some of them are, like I said, nitpicky. So stay tuned for the next video. That one will be 5 things I love about this car, because I truly do love this car. I think it's a great car in my opinion, and there's definitely more positives to it than there are negatives. And even looking at all these, I guess, annoyances with the infotainment, the hill assist, all that stuff, I'm still really glad I got this car, and I'm pretty excited to share all the things that this car does great.